I think if you asked most people what their least favorite season is, winter would probably be in the top spot, and I have to admit that I too am one of those people who dislikes this time of year. In my area, it stays cold well into early spring, so going outside for a walk or even out to eat on a patio are no-goes until April at the earliest. To counter that, I usually begin a video game hibernation around this time of year, and catch up on all the games I hadn't been able to finish or start at all. Over the past summer, I actually got into the habit of buying lots of Switch games when I'd see them on sale at GameStop or Target, and built up quite a collection from that. It got so comedic, I was even taking in paper flyers like an old person would to ensure I paid the sale price if it didn't ring up properly. I can't even remember the last time I paid $60 for a game. But now that I finally have some time to sit down and play my Switch, it's gotten me to revisit some of the older titles I have too. A lot of games that were bought a year ago or more that haven't been touched since then, like Brilliant Diamond. Really quality remake, but it was so easy, I kinda got burnt out on it right before the Elite Four. Smash Bros is another game I hadn't played at all since my old tournament days before the pandemic. Everything after Steve I didn't pay much attention to. And then at the bottom of the stack was Animal Crossing New Horizons. While I do agree with the consensus that it lacked a lot of needed content at the beginning of its launch, it's still one of my most played Switch games, and I remember there were a lot of construction plans I had for my town that I never finished. Not to mention, I never even played the game after the update where they added Brewster and everything else. So it was an easy decision to get back into my town and see where I left off. But as I began starting the game up, and seeing those opening screens my eyes hadn't looked at in a year and a half, I didn't get the same feeling of excitement or eagerness that I was expecting. And after the game loaded up as I began walking around my town, I felt this really weird feeling of sadness, like I didn't even belong there anymore. Crossing paths with villagers I hadn't seen in months, and even those old construction projects that I never finished. I ended up making my way to the town hall, and again, to my surprise, saw all of the new Nook Miles items that had been added in the time I wasn't playing. I saw the ATM machine and thought it looked cool. It would look nice right outside of the building, so I ordered it and planned to create a spot for it when I played next. But that never happened. I didn't play the game after that, and I don't think I want to. As gamers, we're always trying to have new experiences in video games we play, and to me, this one was definitely an experience I hadn't felt before. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, and got me wondering if anyone else felt like this about New Horizons, or any game they hadn't played after all that time passed. It really made me feel down, and it didn't give me the same enjoyment as it used to. This was kinda like a reverse nostalgia. Instead of the good memories that can be brought back by playing an old game, I felt the opposite, which doesn't really make any sense, because I did have good memories playing New Horizons, so it wasn't like I was reliving a bad period in my mind. The only conclusion I could come to at the time was that the sadness existed as a result of having left my town and losing out on all that time with my villagers. That must have been giving me a feeling of abandonment. However, that was kind of a weak argument to have with myself. They're just virtual characters inside a game. I'm sure if you've played Animal Crossing before, you have your own villagers that you care about, or even something like Nintendogs, where it's an actual pet that you can take care of. But in both of those cases, I've never heard of an adult getting sad over a virtual being. Yeah, as a kid, I cared a lot about my Webkinz pet, and freaked out over the smallest of things, because at that age, it felt a lot more realistic. But nowadays, something like that wouldn't bother me as much. It's just a game, it's not like a real cat got sick, and I can't actually hurt my villagers' feelings either. Though it was in that line of thinking that gave me an idea. Maybe if I intentionally revisit some of my most sentimental games, I could bring out the same emotion from New Horizons, and come to a conclusion about why that game made me feel bad. Maybe as I grow older, I'm getting more emotional over my favorite games, rather than just revisiting them for nostalgia once I stop playing. It was something I wanted to experiment with, and I had a few games in mind that I thought could give me some results. These included one game that was a childhood favorite, one game that I played within the past 2 years, and finally, a second Animal Crossing title to compare. The first game I decided to check out was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube. While this title was always one of my favorite games growing up, it was only within the past few years that I would say it's an all-time great. As a kid, I only had a Sega Genesis console for the longest time, until we eventually got a GameCube a couple years after it came out. Sonic was one of my favorite games on the Genesis, so SA2B was one of my earliest game purchases, and it blew me away at the time. I feel like a lot of single-player experiences from childhood can become lost over time. Like, I remember playing through Mario Sunshine and having a lot of difficulty with the Secret of the Village Underside, or even just having fun exploring Hotel Delfino in the levels where they open the rooms up. Those are good memories, but for the most part, I can't recall exactly when I beat the game or how I ended up getting all the blue coins and the smaller details like that. Sonic Adventure 2 is a much different story. We used to have the GameCube set up to a smaller TV in another room, but I eventually moved it out to the living room when I got serious about the A-ranks. I needed a bigger screen. I sat there all afternoon when I could get the TV from the rest of my family, playing Route 101, trying not to crash into the walls, and memorizing the emerald locations from the hint screens in Meteor Herd. I can remember something from almost every stage, and this would have been around the late 2000s. It was a long time ago. I also remember talking about the game a lot with my friend Paul. He was really into the Chow Garden, so we shared a lot of tips and insight with each other. We didn't even have phones or a printer at the time. We had to draw the Chow we created on sticky notes and pass them back and forth to each other in school. For a game with memories that are extensive as these, I thought it would definitely make me feel some kind of sadness, thinking about all those middle school memories. Even the Chow Garden would qualify for that abandonment theory. I haven't looked at them in close to 8 years. But this game didn't even come close to the New Horizons feeling. It actually did feel like pure nostalgia, as I tried to remember the muscle memory I had for the Sonic stages, and even hearing the awesome music in the Eggman stages. The Chow Garden was fun as well. If anything, it made me want to start raising a new Chow again. Seeing the old ones that I hadn't checked on in years didn't make me feel bad. Nothing about the game made me feel bad, it was just a whole lot of fun. So this one wasn't the right choice. For the next game, I wanted to pick a more recent title in comparison to New Horizons' release, so we don't only use games that were made in different periods of time. The one I'm going with is Super Mario Party. This is kind of a surprising one, because growing up, I didn't really like the Mario Party series at all. I had 5, 6, and 7, which were fun, but after the GameCube was discontinued, I lost interest in it, and didn't buy any of the following releases. However, it was a set of well-placed advertising that got me to revisit the series more than a decade after having played it. Around the time of Super Mario Party's release, they were playing ads all over the place for the game, so it had already caught my attention, but then I checked out a demo at a retail kiosk in Target, and really enjoyed it. I hadn't played a Mario Party game in so long. This felt like a new direction for the series, and I wanted to see the whole game. The only problem was, I needed friends to play with. Thinking back to those days of the GameCube versions, they were fun as a kid when anything Mario was fun, but I stopped following the series for a reason. It's like playing a board game by yourself when the game is really meant to be played with other people. That might seem like a stupid comparison, but when you stop playing with CPUs and get together with friends, it's like a completely different game. My friend group at the time was looking for something new to play, since Smash Bros. Had run its course, and I had just picked up Super Mario Party, so we decided to give it a shot, after having never played the series together before, and it was an instant success. The experience of a multiplayer game when everyone is at the same skill level made for a lot of fun, but factoring in the unique features like custom character dice blocks and golden pipes made it even better. Sometimes we'd even play with house rules where no one would use golden pipes, and then of course we'd have that one friend who went against the rule anyway. The character dice blocks were so good too, often deciding what character each of us would pick, and the smaller board sizes allowed for a closer feel. But after that friend group broke up, we rarely talked, and if we did, it had nothing to do with those old games of Mario Party. In fact, in the months following, I actually lost the copy of the game we had been using at those hangouts. It's as if it was some kind of sign that it was better off left in the past, but I ended up digging it out anyway. And this one did hit a little harder than Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. It wasn't just the memories of playing the game with friends, but certain parts of it that brought back feelings. I forgot we had also collected all the gems, and replayed through the same modes several times, attempting to 100% the game. The river survival had many different paths, and we tried to go through them all, while also playing through all the bonus puzzles too. It became a staple at our hangouts, and I can remember many times throughout the winter, when it was too cold to do anything else, we would literally gather, sometimes after midnight, just because we wanted to play the game so badly. The only thing we never finished was getting all the stickers and completing the online mode, by switching off players. But even though the game is full of nostalgia, and it's a lot more recent than anything I had done in Sonic Adventure 2, it still didn't hit quite as hard as New Horizons. The characters in Super Mario Party still exist as Mario characters in other games I've played since then, and the boards aren't relative to any time of day or year. It's easier to disassociate the two, compared to a game that's all about the player, like Animal Crossing is. Which leads into the last game I picked for this experiment, Animal Crossing on the GameCube. I was thinking that out of all the games I've played growing up and revisited when I was older, but haven't checked out in years, this would be the only other title to bring about that sadness for me. It's the game which single-handedly coined the term nostalgia for my generation of gamers, and I've already made several videos talking about why it's my favorite game of all time. But surprisingly, I think there's a certain element of this game that was never lost for me to create that sad feeling, because I don't think it ever really left my mind. Even though I haven't actually gone into my town for years, or discussed the game with anyone recently, I can remember everything about it. To use the cliche, it feels like yesterday I was filming clips for that collab video and looking for plushes from the game. When I think of Animal Crossing, that's the title that comes to mind. It's always been there for me, so it's nothing I can expressly feel sad about. It's also worth mentioning that while my siblings did play it back in the day, and I had visited my friend's town a couple times, I have far more single-player experiences than I ever did with other people. So maybe as a whole, that's cheating the experiment. I decided to take it one step further and look at the follow-up entry, Wild World, as this one hit me in a completely different way. While Wild World is far from my favorite title in the series, and I still have a lot of complaints about it to this day, it's a game I played a lot growing up, and was maybe even obsessed with. At the time I got the game, the DS was a new handheld, so that in itself was exciting. But all the new features not included in the GameCube one blew my mind. It felt so much more limitless in comparison. It also became one of those games that I looked up cheat codes for, because I wanted to know everything about it. I never really did that in the GameCube version, with the exception of stuff my friends gave me, but for Wild World I actually dug into it a lot more. But I think most importantly, the years I spent doing all this, with the game, defined a point in my life. Right in the doldrums of middle school, when I was still trying to figure stuff out, which is exactly what I feel like New Horizons did too, only in a different way. So when I did turn on Wild World again, I felt a certain level of sadness as I walked through the game that I probably haven't seen in more than a decade. It still had all the old shirt designs of the Able sisters, my modified house with the turnip glitch on it, and all the empty space from my old neighbors that have since moved out. It really did feel like I was looking at a piece of the past with this game. This was the closest feeling I could get to New Horizons with any game from my history. And in that moment, I realized what makes Animal Crossing New Horizons feel so depressing. For the year or so of time I spent playing New Horizons when it first came out, I sunk dozens of hours into the game. All the town projects I had been building, the rooms in my houses which were decorated way more carefully than any of the previous games, and the villagers that I specifically wouldn't let move away. It all meant something to me while I was creating this little world, and of course that includes the people I experienced it with. My siblings all created characters like they did in the other games, but actually contributed to the structure of the town. They helped in funding the town decorations, which is funny to think I was able to squeeze any bells out of them for that, My sister and I also had competing pumpkin patches, and we were trying to see how quickly we could get rich from them, while my brother always wanted a backyard like mine, but never actually built one, so it kinda just acted as a dumping ground. My friend group had also been doing virtual hangouts during the pandemic, and we visited each other's towns many times, adding new content and inside jokes to them with every new visit. There are all these memories wrapped up in the game because it wasn't just me playing alone, and these assets kinda act as a vessel for the memories that simply weren't present or this extensive in the older Animal Crossing games. But like I mentioned earlier, that friend group doesn't exist anymore. My sister moved out of the house, and my brother doesn't have time to play a lot of games anymore. So the town feels dead. It feels like a piece of my past, and I never ever realized it while I was actually playing the game. But New Horizons really became a piece of my life beyond just a game. I think the conclusion that I finally reached is that it's not a matter of being sad about the game world. It's the extension of the game world played in my real life during the months I spent in my town. And that simply doesn't exist anymore in the same way that it used to. And New Horizons simply acts as this game because it accomplishes it better than anything else I've ever played before. Its extensive customization options and universal appeal to anyone that picks up the game makes this possible. It's not the actual items or the fact that I'm late to the party that bothers me, it's the fact that I can't take these items back in time to enjoy them with the people I played the game with, creating that feeling of sadness. Maybe a more concise way to put this is that New Horizons acts like a diary, so you're effectively reliving old memories through the landscape of your town. When you read an old diary, or watch an old family VHS tape, it's not the sadness you feel from the media itself, but it's the extension of that in relation to the real world. After having watched this video, you might be able to say that my conclusion was an easy one to have reached, but personally, it's something I never thought about before in this way, and it's certainly something I've never experienced in a video game before. That level of impact is pretty strong, and really speaks to the impact of the game as a whole. There's another piece of me that feels like I should just revisit the town completely and put those memories aside, but I think it would end up being too hard. I don't even really want to change too much of the town the way it is now. Aside from maybe finishing those town projects, but even if I did, the people they were partially intended for would never see them. The town feels like it's frozen in time, and I kinda want it to stay that way as an archive. If anything, I could just buy a new game and start another town, but there are a lot of other things to play that I can enjoy by myself or make new memories with. The game was fun and means a lot, but the idea of New Horizons staying in the past entirely is okay with me. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other Lost Media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.